Today's episode of the Cloudcast is sponsored by Datadog, the monitoring platform for cloud scale infrastructure and applications. Datadog provides dashboarding, alerting, application performance monitoring, and log management in one tightly integrated platform, so you can get end-to-end visibility quickly. And it integrates seamlessly with AWS, so you can start monitoring EC2, RDS, ECS, and all your other AWS services in minutes. Visualize key metrics, set alerts to identify anomalies, and collaborate with your team to troubleshoot and fix issues fast. Sign up for a free trial today, and Datadog will send you a free t-shirt. Visit datadoghq.com/cloudcast to get started. That's datadoghq.com/cloudcast.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hope everybody's doing well. We are getting very close to Halloween by the time you listen to this. Hope everybody's stocked up on candy, have enough so that the kids aren't egging your house because you don't have any candy for them. So with that, let's go ahead and get right to the cloud news of the week. Kind of a little bit of a busy week, just in terms of announcements. A couple of different types of announcements this week, which were kind of worth noting, news and noteworthy. First is Splunk, who has been sort of on a acquisition tear this year. They had acquired SignalFX earlier in the year for a little over $1 billion, agreed to acquire Streamline. And I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that because the URL and the name kind of blurred together. So it's Streaml.io. I'm not sure if that's Streaml.io or Streamilio. Streamilio, open source distributed messaging leader. So in the messaging space, obviously we're seeing more and more people doing real-time types of applications. So Splunk wants to make sure they can get in on being able to monitor those and provide insight on those. So interesting to see Splunk continue to make acquisitions in this space. And if anybody knows the proper way to pronounce Streamilio or Streaml.io, let me know. Second was a lot of musical chairs going on in the CEO space, the tech CEO space. So a couple of interesting ones. SAP's CEO stepped down, resigned after about 10 or so years. Stepped down as CEO. People weren't exactly sure where he was going to go. Yesterday, he popped up as the new CEO of ServiceNow. So, SAP's former CEO, at least the U.S. CEO, moved over to ServiceNow, and ServiceNow's CEO, who previously was just sitting on the board of Nike, board member at Nike, is now the CEO at Nike. So interesting to see a technology CEO take over at Nike. Obviously, the two previous ones, both Phil Knight, who originally was there, and then the one who recently left. Lots of sort of athletic background, kind of more in the design space, sort of entrepreneurial space. Seeing them move in a digital direction is sort of interesting. I know a lot of their business has been moving towards digital, moving towards online. Our buddy Nick Weaver, who's over at Nike, working on some of those projects. So interesting to see Nike make that shift in terms of the focus or the background of their leadership. The sort of famous MPLS, Mario, Prem, Luca, and Sony from sort of Cisco fame are back in the news today. So their company Pensando, who has been around for a little while sort of in stealth, just took a very, very large round of funding, bringing up their funding to about $250 million. They took about $135 or $150 million in funding. And John Chambers is the chairman of the board of Pensando. So interesting to see that crew back. They in the past had always had this nice way of extracting money out of Cisco and starting their company and getting Cisco to fund it and then getting Cisco to acquire it. Cisco was not in the funding round for this one. This was HP and a number of others, or HPE and a number of others. So very interesting to see if this is a sort of a vengeance play against Cisco and Chuck Robbins, who had sort of kicked MPLS out of the company. If this is another round of coming back Pied Piper style for John Chambers. Always a lot of sort of interesting politics around how MPLS and John Chambers and others had brought new technologies to market, and this is yet another sort of hardware and software play from this crowd, which is interesting because they position it as taking on Amazon Web Services, which is kind of a weird comparison between a gigantic cloud provider with lots of software assets and somebody building hardware and software for boxes and so forth. So, and then the last piece of news, and this is sort of the work that I do on a daily basis, the Red Hat OpenShift platform GA'd their 4.2 release. So for those of you that follow Kubernetes, this has sort of been a long time coming in terms of the 4.2 release, having support for all the major cloud platforms, all the major installation styles, and then a ton of new stuff around trying to help developers that build applications on top of Kubernetes. So if you follow Kubernetes or you follow OpenShift, the new 4.2 release is out, and something that I spend a lot of my time on when I'm not doing Cloudcast stuff. So with that, we're going to get to our interview. Kind of an interesting interview this week. Last 3 or 4 weeks, we've done a little bit different than some of the technology deep dives that we typically do. This one is, again, a little more focused on the business side, really focused on kind of the SaaS world and how people bring SaaS products to market, how they get them into the marketplace, how companies interact with them, and how to streamline those processes, because that's a huge part of sort of the SaaS equation of how do you make businesses successful, is how do you bring them to market. So interesting interview. Hope you enjoy it. And with that, we will wrap up Cloud News of the Week. Today's show is sponsored by PricingWire. Think about all the time, effort, uncertainty, and everything else you are investing into the software solution you're building. PricingWire has helped more than 1,000 software and technology innovators like you take a proactive approach to both discover and get paid what you're truly worth. From early startups to Fortune 500 enterprises, across verticals and around the globe, PricingWire delivers easy-to-understand and actionable recommendations to guide your monetization and pricing strategy. If you want to avoid unnecessary challenges or costly regrets and prevent missing time-sensitive revenue opportunities, PricingWire can help. Just go to pricingwire.com and book a strategy session today. PricingWire helps technology innovators like you design the right offerings, better quantify and message value, set and change prices, select the right pricing metrics, or even decide if usage-based pricing is best for you. Why wouldn't you want to achieve your revenue goals faster and with more confidence? Learn more at pricingwire.com and start making meaningful progress today. And we're back. Folks, for anybody who's been a long-time listener of the show, you know that a lot of times we do tend to focus on getting deep into the technology weeds. We tend to maybe skew a little bit more towards some of the IaaS and PaaS types of technologies that a lot of you are using to build your systems. But more and more, we're finding ourselves, whether we're talking to you as the listeners, or we're beginning to introduce new topics, that the topic of SaaS and all the different aspects of SaaS really are kind of fascinating to you, whether it's how the technology works to a certain extent, API integration to different services, or the business models. We did a great show with Neil Lakhani a few weeks ago. And your feedback has been, we'd like to learn more about SaaS. It's playing a bigger role in our decision-making. We know that the groups within our organization are using more SaaS. And so we thought it'd be interesting to dive into that a little bit more, maybe a little bit more on the kind of sales enablement, buyer enablement side. And so excited today to have Nicolas Vandenberghe, who is co-founder of Chili Piper. Nicolas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here today. A little bit, you've got a very kind of diverse background, broad background around SaaS companies. You've been founder and CEO of a number of them. Can you tell us a little about your background and some of your experiences prior to Chili Piper, and then kind of what drove you to found the company?
Sure. So I'm a tech entrepreneur. I've done, this is my fifth company. I actually caught the bug in the mid-90s. I came to Stanford Business School and with the idea of traveling the world. And I ran into Steve Jobs at the time. And I thought, this is just the coolest job in the planet to create this company. That's what I want to do. So I started in my tech entrepreneurship career back at that time. I've done several startups that have grown and sold in different spaces. I've done consumer software, I've done biometrics, I've done some other things of this nature. I've also had an interesting experience in 2009. A friend of mine called me and told me he was starting a company, and he said, then we have $2 billion in funding. And I thought, I've never heard of a startup with $2 billion in funding. And the idea was to build a telecom company in the US. It was a company called LightSquare. And I joined that founding team initially in sales, but quickly they asked me to take over as Chief Information Officer. So I had this unique experience of being the CIO of a telecom company in 2010-11. And at the time, we were the first to actually bring all the strategic systems of a telecom company into the cloud. It was a very interesting experiment. I heard the news on your podcast last week or the week before, AT&T moving its IT to the IBM cloud, which seems the most natural thing in 2019. But in 2010, people thought we were crazy to put telecom gear and IT gear in the cloud. So I have this dual perspective. Also spend a lot of time in sales, running sales team, or selling things myself. And that's what led me to start Chili Piper. I look at how the industry is changing, or the sales process is changing, and I thought, the tools that salespeople are currently using are no longer adapted to how the market is functioning. It's time to be much more focused on the buyer and helping the buyer through the process. The existing technologies like Salesforce, the CRM, automate internal processes, but what's really critical now is the external processes. Make sure that your buyer has a good experience all the way through from initial engagement to renewal, and that's why we started Chili Piper.
Yeah, no, I think it is sort of fascinating. I've been in the side of vendors who have been selling technology to different companies, and I think back 10 years ago even, we were as the seller kind of the primary educator of the customer base. We're educating them about the market. We're educating them about products. Nowadays, as I get a chance to talk to different companies, you walk into meetings and they not only are educated about the market through various sources, they know about your product. They've probably downloaded it or they've had a trial with it. It is a completely different sort of process and stage. But I'm curious from the seller's perspective and the way that you look at it from a SaaS perspective. Can you give us a bigger picture of maybe some of the steps that are involved and maybe some of the steps that you've seen either get eliminated or change over time?
Yes, well, the SaaS model is completely transforming how IT is getting bought. There's something that for some reason is not often spoken about. It's the change in the speed of technology acquisition and the length of contract. So it used to be that companies would spend 12 to 15 months to evaluate a technology, make a decision, and the contract was 5 to 7 years. I remember when I took over as CIO at LightSquare, the guy before me had signed up contracts with Oracle that were all at least 5 years. There was an all 5-year contract. Now in SaaS, it's very rare to sign a 2-year contract. I mean, sometimes it's a quarterly, it's even monthly. And companies are able to go from one vendor to the other much more easily. Another things that have fundamentally changed with SaaS is switching costs. Switching costs have reduced dramatically. That's mostly because of the ease of integration. So now there's an OAuth process where you can connect anything to Salesforce, anything to Gmail, anything to Office 365 in 2 clicks. Also, APIs are much more frequent. So most companies like we do at Chili Piper, we integrate with dozens of different APIs as part of our development. So this has meant that the buyer has the option to try something, run it, and if he doesn't like it, then or she doesn't like it, switch to something else quite easily. It's much easier than it used to be. I remember when I was at LightSquare, a proposal came on the table on my desk for a $750,000 project to build some additional developments around SharePoint, the Microsoft SharePoint. And I looked at it and I said, okay, well, who is using SharePoint in the organization? And the answer was, well, we don't know. We just thought it was an interesting project to do that. I asked my system administrator to go and look at the logs and see who had logged in the instance in the last 6 months. And we found that there had been 21 people in total and 7 people really seriously. So basically that thing, we were going to spend $750,000 for something that was never used by our users. That doesn't happen anymore. If you have a SaaS offering and you see something is not used, you're going to just terminate the contract immediately. It's part of at any renewal point, you're going to wonder if this is really getting value and decide to continue or not. So the speed has completely changed. Also the availability of solutions has blossomed. So I was looking at within the sales tech, there are 850 solutions in our space. In MarTech, there's about 1,500 different solutions. So there's now all these possible options on tools to be used, and the ability to try them, combine them, then churn them. It's a completely different dynamic that we're seeing that. So in this world, as part of this different dynamic, it changes also the level of transparency from vendors. Because in the past, if you would, as part of a product suite, one of the product was a bit weaker, then you would still bundle it and just sell it, and that was it. You had a 5-year contract and nothing to worry about. Now, if you have a lemon in your product line and you're going to stuff it to your buyer, it's going to bite you back 6 months later, and it's not worth it. So that's one of the key observation before I started Chili Piper, that it is now a much more collaborative approach between buyers and sellers. It's no longer about negotiating and hiding information, but buyers and sellers are much better off sharing information and being transparent and honest and working together. So that's also a big change in the dynamics of the market.
Yeah, no, I mean, you highlighted a number of like really, really kind of eye-opening things and sort of important things. I know for some odd reason, I was looking one day about SaaS offerings that were being promoted to like the construction industry. And I thought, oh, okay, well, that doesn't seem like a very high-tech industry. And it was like you said, there was not 5 or 6, there were tens and maybe hundreds that were targeting that, and you highlighted another important thing, which is they each individually will target some little piece of somebody's supply chain or some little piece of somebody's process. It could be how a contract is done, how location is found, how something else happens, and you highlight how important it is that companies now have the option of saying, I don't want to be stuck with your big suite of portfolio. If I only want 1 or 2 pieces, I'm just going to use those pieces and I'll augment them with something else. So, that applies to sort of like IT centric sort of problems, but they also apply to, to marketing and sales problems. And it is very interesting how there is this massive variety of choice, and then there's so much disaggregation to try and sort out and make useful.
You're exactly right. Of course, another piece of puzzle is the fact that software development is much cheaper now. So you can do a lot more. I'm amazed by the speed at which our engineers move. I remember back in the day, our cycles, when I did consumer software, it was a 12-month cycle or 18-month cycle. We'd build something, would take 18 months. Now, in 3 months, you can build something that's actually very useful. And so you're right. Now it's possible to build solutions that are very specific to particular problems, like you mentioned in the construction industry, a particular piece of the problem. And because everything is integrated, then companies can say, oh, I want that piece. That's useful to me, and mix and match the different pieces. So it's a very.
I think it's important to understand the breadth of the dynamics you're now dealing with. They don't really fit into the kind of old business school models of kind of linearity or like you said, lack of transparency that make the business effective.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And go ahead.
Yeah, no, I want to highlight. I want to hit on a little bit. What Chili Piper does specifically around helping sales and marketing. Today, companies would probably tell you, well, we sort of know how to do that. We've got channels for selling things. We put up a website. Maybe people come for a trial. Give us a sense of where you fit into those pieces and how you help enable it and hopefully make them more successful, more productive, but also more importantly, stay connected with those customers so that you don't have shelfware, you don't have lack of usage. People are encouraged to be using the product because it's making them more productive.
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, our focus is on technology that's actually customer facing. So it's technology that helps the buyers. We call that buyer enablement, which is the idea of building technology that's going to make the buyer's life easier. So we're looking at supporting the relationship between the buyer and the seller. And we enter this market, basically we're looking at places where there are inefficiencies, right? And when both buyers and sellers are suffering. So our current product is something called Concierge. It's actually strikingly simple to explain, and yet we're the only ones with that solution. Until we launched it, sellers would have a website, spend a lot of money in marketing, bring all these leads on the website. Then they would ask the leads to fill a form, and when the prospect filled that form, you will get a thank you page that says, thank you, somebody is going to call you. And you think, well, who is going to call me and when, right? And then you get a call maybe an hour later, maybe a day later, maybe never. And then finally engage with the buying or with the seller. And the amazing thing is that companies were losing typically more than half their pipeline through that wrong process. So what we did is we said, well, let's build software that integrates with the form, that does all the qualification and routing in real time and connects with the seller immediately. So when you submit the form at the prospect, you immediately faced with the option to be able to talk on the phone with the right person or to book a time for a later conversation on the calendar. So the prospect can engage with the seller in 2 clicks immediately after filling the form. That seems obvious looking back, but we're the only ones who are offering this solution. The reason why there was this breakpoint is because the form is typically the responsibility of marketing in an organization, where the follow-up is the responsibility of sales, and both departments have typically optimized their processes, but not the cross processes. So the buyer is left on his own, waiting for marketing to follow up on, waiting for sales to follow up on marketing, and suffering from a very poor experience as a result. So that's our current product. That's at the initial engagement level. We help the buyers have a much better experience. And what happens as a result is that the conversion rates typically double. So our customers who deploy a solution go from conversion rates around 35 to 40% to conversion rates in the 70 to 75%, just because they make the buyer's life easier. So the way we think of it is that we've done the work for the initial engagement, but all through the life cycle of the relationship, there are also some other breakpoints that need to be addressed. One of them is in the sales process. What typically happens is that the champion on the buying side is going to be convinced that buying the solution is a good idea, but then he has a lot of work to do to convince internally all his teammates that it's the right solution. And until now, the seller was not the seller's responsibility to help the buyer. They would just go on their own. And now we're thinking, well, you have to help the buyer. Things move fast. The decision is going to be moved fast. They may go with a competitor if they have more information from the competitor. So you have to help your buyer in that process. That's, again, what we call buyer enablement. And then all the way to the renewal, where the buyer is going to have to make a decision to renew or not. And it's in the seller's interest to make sure that the buyer has all the right information. There's information sharing that needs to happen at the renewal stage is something that is not well done today, and that we will address also in our future products.
Yeah, it's an interesting. There's sort of an interesting parallel. On the technology side, we talk a lot about this concept called DevOps, where in order to deliver software faster, you've got to have better coordination between the developers building software and it getting into production and then being managed by operations. And we talk about that a lot in the context of both of those teams may optimize themselves to do what they're supposed to do, but in a lot of cases their higher level goals aren't necessarily aligned, right? And I think what you're kind of highlighting is, sales and marketing may very well think that they're doing exactly what they're doing today is very good, but the handoff is not optimized. The goals that they're measured against individually aren't indicative of how well they work with the other group. It's, did I get enough leads? Did I spend the money the right way? Sales is obviously quota driven. It's interesting to see the parallels in what you're trying to do to build technology to bridge those two.
Yeah, it's a very good analogy. Actually, in our space, there is something very similar to DevOps. It's the emergence of revenue ops. So there used to be marketing ops, sales ops as completely different department. Now companies are merging these two into what they call revenue ops. It actually spans all the way to customer success. And the idea that all the tools and enablement has to be optimized, just like you said, across these departments, not department by department. As of today, only pioneers are actually using revenue ops, but for sure it's a trend. Just like you the analogy you use with DevOps, a trend that's going to be a growing trend, because the benefits of going this way are massive, right? Like I mentioned, when you double your conversion rates on your inbound pipeline, you immediately improving your top line. So it's very clear what benefits you're achieving, and this is going to drive that change for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting the parallels we see when we're all ultimately, like you said, trying to go faster, trying to deliver, enable things faster. If at all possible, are you able to kind of share some real examples of how maybe some of your companies, your customers are kind of putting this to work, and beyond just conversion rates, but maybe some of the ways that culturally they've been make them more effective?
Yes, sure. So the most striking example in our customer base is one of the large networks. So you can guess which one. That found that if they can entice their existing customer, so not prospect, existing customer, to talk to a sales executive, that sales executive is able to raise their spending. It's in case it's a small business, by 50%. So what they did is that they deployed our solution within their application, where when customer takes certain action, they say, hey, why don't you talk to our expert about it? And they're going to connect immediately or book a meeting with our solution immediately. And that connection is going to result in an increase. So in this case, it's typically an increase expected value of $50. So that company that we work with has now deployed it worldwide in every country. They book more than 20,000 meetings every 7 days. It's a massive operation. And as a result, every 7 days through connecting with the customers, they improve their top line by $1 million. So it's $1 million every 7 days by better connecting with their customers. I think at that scale, you can guess which company would have this level of small business customers. So that's one example of facilitating the engagement with your customers is just going to result in immediate top line dollars. We have a lot of other companies using on a more traditional use case of the inbound. So there's a company called Grow that did some research. They had the traditional process of having prospect fill a form, having a sales development rep call that prospect, have a chat, then book the meeting. And they were plateauing at 40% conversion because you lose a lot of prospects. They disappear, or they're no longer interested. So when they integrated concierge into their solution, they use some data augmentation to make sure they could qualify in real time the prospect and then book directly with the account executive. And as a result, what happened is that the number of meetings held nearly doubled. It went to 72% from where they were. And that, again, translated directly into top line.
Yeah, no, it is. It is fascinating what happens when you are sort of actively involved in processes, whether it's sales or anything else. Let me wrap up with one sort of last question, because obviously we've talked a lot about SaaS and the things that are sold through SaaS models. Have you found, and maybe this doesn't exist, but are any of the things that you work on able to be applicable to other organizations, sales and marketing, that maybe aren't SaaS centric, maybe are more contract based or so forth, or even just kind of best practices you may have found that helps them adapt better if they're not kind of doing these everyday contacts with companies and customers?
Yes, absolutely. We do have customers of all types. Actually, one of our customers is the LA Film School. And they use our software to book a meeting with prospective students. Another company is Remote Here. This company you may have heard of, where people travel around the world for 12 months. Same thing, they use our solution to engage with their prospects in real time. The idea of engaging better with your buyer is completely general. I mean, everybody would benefit from it, whether you're selling cars or classes. It just makes sense. The reason why SaaS companies have been our early adopters is because they are under more pressure to compete. It's a more active market, and they need to move fast. But it's a general trend that it will cover every industry one after the other. And I'm mentioning right now a concierge product that helps this initial engagement, but it's the same thing with the later stages of the relationship. You get used to interacting with companies on your iPhone in a very pleasant way. And then when you move to the world of business, you expect the same level of service, right? You expect to be able to find the information you want in real time, talk to the person you want as soon as you want to. And that is just going to be true in every industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's and it does make sense that the tools apply best to sort of SaaS companies. They do fit a little more of that kind of what you'd call a greenfield model. They're not bound by a lot of sort of legacy process and so forth, and they're really out trying to change the behavior of people. So, but it is good to hear that it can be applicable to that. Nicolas, I'm gonna wrap it up with that. If folks want to engage with you, want to engage with Chili Piper, what are some of the best ways to go about doing that?
Well, they can come to our website and experience our solution. If you go to chilipiper.com, so it's a play on word, right? It's chili with one L, CHILI, and then Piper, PIP, or together, chilipiper.com. They can request a demo or a meeting with us, and they will experience our product immediately in real time. How we can engage with them on the phone, on video, or through a calendar instantly. That's probably the best way to get in touch with us.
Very good. Well, folks, like we mentioned early on, this was a little bit different than sometimes we do. We go real deep on technology, but hopefully this gave you some better perspective on, the evolution of what's going on with SaaS, how it's helping companies not only look at opportunities, look at them more granularly. And Nicolas, thank you so much for the time today. It provided us a lot of very, very good insight. So, well, it's been a great show, and we want to thank again our sponsors, Datadog and PricingWire, for sponsoring today's show. It's easy to learn more about PricingWire and book a strategy session at pricingwire.com. So with that, folks, I want to thank you all for listening. Thanks for telling a friend. Thanks for rating the show and all the other ways that you help us grow the community. So with that, we're going to wrap it up, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.